On December 4, 1872, a British brigantine discovered an American merchant vessel drifting in the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 400 nautical miles east of the Azores. The ship's sails were partially set. The cargo remained secure in the hold. Personal belongings sat undisturbed in crew quarters. Navigation equipment functioned normally, but all 10 occupants had vanished without leaving distress signals, damage evidence, or logical indicators of emergency abandonment. Maritime investigators documented conditions that violated standard crisis protocols, while simultaneously showing no signs of violence, piracy, or structural failure. The Mary Celeste departed New York Harbor on November 7, 1872, carrying 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol bound for Genoa, Italy. Captain Benjamin Briggs commanded the vessel. He was 37 years old. He possessed 12 years of command experience with 0 maritime incidents on his record. Insurance companies rated him as exceptionally reliable. Briggs brought his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia on the voyage. This was standard practice for captains on extended trade routes. His 7-man crew consisted of experienced sailors, all with documented records of competent seamanship. First Mate Albert Richardson had sailed under Briggs on previous voyages and maintained an impeccable disciplinary history. The vessel itself measured just over 100 feet in length with a cargo capacity of 282 tons. Recent inspections confirmed the ship was seaworthy. The hull showed no structural weaknesses. Pumping systems functioned within normal parameters. The Mary Celeste carried standard safety equipment, including a lifeboat, navigation instruments, and emergency provisions. Captain David Morehouse of the British brigantine Dei Gratia spotted the Mary Celeste on December 4th. Morehouse knew Briggs personally. They had dined together in New York just days before both ships departed on their respective voyages. Morehouse observed the Mary Celeste's erratic movement patterns. The vessel yawed unpredictably. Some sails were set, others were furled in non-standard configurations. No crew appeared on deck. No response came to signal flags or hailing attempts. Morehouse dispatched his first mate Oliver DeVoe and 2 crew members to board the vessel. They documented their findings and testimony, later provided to the Vice Admiralty Court in Gibraltar. The main hatch was secured. The galley stove was knocked out of position, but cold to the touch. The ship's compass was destroyed. The binnacle housing showed damage. 1 pump had been partially disassembled with tools left on deck. The ship's single lifeboat was missing, along with the navigation chronometer and sextant. The ship's register and other essential documents were also absent. In the captain's cabin, DeVoe found personal items untouched. Briggs' watch hung on a hook. Sarah Briggs' sewing kit sat on the desk. Sophia's toys remained in their storage chest. The logbook sat open on the navigation table. The final entry, dated November 25th at 8 a.m., recorded the ship's position as 6 miles from Santa Maria Island in the Azores. The entry contained no indication of distress, emergency, or unusual conditions. It documented routine position data using standard notation. The crew quarters showed similar conditions. Clothing hung neatly. Personal effects remained in assigned storage areas. Pipe tobacco sat in containers. No signs of hurried departure. No indication of struggle or conflict. The galley contained food in various stages of preparation. Provisions remained adequate for multiple additional weeks at sea. Water supply measured approximately 3.5 feet in the ship's tanks, sufficient for 10 people for at least 10 more days. The cargo hold presented the investigation's first significant data point. The 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol remained secured and properly stowed. However, 9 barrels showed evidence of seepage. The wooden staves had expanded slightly, creating small gaps. Alcohol vapors had likely accumulated in the sealed hold. This created a potentially explosive atmosphere that would be invisible to the crew, but detectable through smell. The barrels in question were positioned near the main hatch. DeVoe noted approximately 3.5 feet of water in the bilge. This exceeded normal accumulation, but fell well short of dangerous levels. The pumps could have cleared this volume in under 2 hours of standard operation. The vessel showed no hull breaches, no collision damage, no evidence of grounding. The rudder functioned normally. The wheel spun freely without obstruction. The Vice Admiralty Court convened in Gibraltar to investigate the circumstances and determine salvage rights. Testimony from both the De Gratia crew and maritime experts established a timeline. The Mary Celeste had been abandoned sometime after November 25th, when the final log entry was recorded. Weather data from multiple vessels in the region documented moderate conditions during that period. No severe storms, no unusual wave activity, no documented hazards. Frederick Solly Flood, Attorney General of Gibraltar and Judge Advocate, conducted the inquiry. He initially suspected foul play. He examined the deck for blood evidence using contemporary forensic methods. He found reddish-brown stains on the deck and on a sword discovered in the captain's cabin. Chemical analysis later identified the stains as rust and oxidized fruit residue, not blood. No evidence of violence emerged from any examination. Expert witnesses testified regarding potential abandonment scenarios. The prevailing theory focused on the alcohol vapor accumulation. If crew members opened the main hatch and encountered a rush of alcohol fumes, they might have feared an imminent explosion. This could trigger a decision to abandon ship temporarily, intending to remain nearby in the lifeboat until the perceived danger passed. However, this scenario contained logical inconsistencies. First, experienced sailors understood the difference between explosive vapor conditions and actual fire risk. Denatured alcohol requires specific ignition sources. The galley stove was cold. No lamps were lit in the hold. The probability of spontaneous ignition remained extremely low. Second, if the crew abandoned ship due to vapor concerns, they would have taken minimal provisions and maintained visual contact with the vessel. The Mary Celeste drifted for 9 days before discovery. A lifeboat with 10 people, including a 2-year-old child, could not survive that duration with only emergency provisions. Third, the missing navigation equipment suggested planned long-term separation from the ship. Sailors conducting temporary evacuation would not remove the chronometer, sextant, and ship's papers. These items indicated an intention to navigate independently. But to what destination? The nearest land was Santa Maria Island, only 6 miles distant, according to the final log entry. If the crew reached that location, Portuguese authorities documented no reports of American sailors arriving in distress. Alternative theories emerged during and after the inquiry. Some investigators proposed a seaquake, an underwater seismic event that could create sudden waterspouts or anomalous wave patterns. Such an event might panic an inexperienced crew into abandoning ship. But Captain Briggs was not inexperienced. His 12-year record demonstrated consistent rational decision-making under pressure. His wife and child were aboard. The calculus of remaining on a structurally sound vessel versus entering a lifeboat in open ocean heavily favored staying with the ship. Piracy theories circulated, but lacked supporting evidence. Pirates would have taken the valuable cargo. The 1,700 barrels of alcohol represented significant monetary value. Personal items, navigation equipment, and food stores would also have been looted. Instead, only items necessary for lifeboat navigation were missing. The crew's sea chests remained filled with clothing and personal possessions that would have been taken by pirates. Mutiny scenarios were proposed, but immediately contradicted by evidence. Mutineers would have either remained aboard the Mary Celeste or scuttled the vessel after transferring to the lifeboat. They would not have left a perfectly functional ship drifting with valuable cargo intact. Additionally, Briggs' crew had no documented disciplinary issues, grievances, or histories of insubordination. One detail from the investigation remained unexplained and was largely overlooked in contemporary analysis. The ship's compass was found destroyed in its housing, not damaged by weather or normal wear. Destroyed. The needle was bent. The housing showed impact trauma. Some investigators noted this, but provided no explanation for how or why the compass would be deliberately damaged during an emergency evacuation. The lifeboat's capacity presented another logical problem. The Mary Celeste's single lifeboat could accommodate 10 people, but offered minimal protection against Atlantic conditions in November. Maritime safety protocols of that era strongly discouraged abandoning a seaworthy vessel for a lifeboat, except in cases of imminent sinking or fire. Neither condition existed on the Mary Celeste. The court ultimately ruled the abandonment circumstances inexplicable, but awarded salvage rights to the De Gratia crew. Captain Morehouse received a payment significantly lower than standard salvage awards, partly due to lingering suspicion that he may have been involved in a conspiracy with Briggs. No evidence supported this theory. Morehouse and Briggs were acquaintances, but had no documented business arrangements or financial connections that would motivate elaborate fraud. The Mary Celeste was refitted and returned to service. She sailed under different owners for 12 more years. The vessel gained a reputation as cursed or unlucky. Multiple captains reported mechanical failures, navigation difficulties, and crew superstitions. In 1885, her final captain deliberately ran her aground off the coast of Haiti in an attempted insurance fraud scheme. The plan failed and resulted in criminal charges. No trace of Captain Briggs, his family, or the 7 crew members was ever found. No bodies, no wreckage from the lifeboat, no reports from any port matching their description. Portuguese authorities in the Azores, the nearest landfall, documented no American sailors arriving between November 25th and December 4th. Spanish, British, and North African ports similarly reported no such arrivals. Investigators and maritime historians have proposed over 40 distinct theories across 150 years. None reconcile all documented evidence. The vapor scare theory explains the hasty departure, but not the 9-day survival gap. The seaquake theory explains panic, but not the removed navigation equipment. The waterspout theory explains sudden conditions, but not the lack of corresponding weather documentation from other vessels. The most comprehensive analysis appeared in a 2002 study by Maritime historian Conrad Byers. He noted that the Mary Celeste's pumps were partially disassembled when discovered. This suggested the crew was addressing routine water accumulation. If they opened the main hatch during this work and encountered alcohol vapors, they might have misinterpreted a sounding rod reading. Early sounding rods could give false readings if vapor pressure in the hold created acoustic anomalies. If the crew believed the ship was taking on water at a catastrophic rate based on a faulty reading, they might abandon ship. But this still required them to ignore visual evidence that the vessel was not foundering. The final piece of documented evidence came from a separate ship, the Maritime, which reported passing near Santa Maria Island on November 25th. The Maritime's log noted unusual atmospheric conditions and distorted acoustic phenomena consistent with localized seismic activity. This single reference suggests environmental factors may have played a role. But seismic events do not explain the systematic removal of navigation equipment or the complete disappearance of 10 people. The Mary Celeste case file remains in maritime archives as an example of an incident where every individual piece of evidence possesses a rational explanation, but the complete sequence of events defies logical reconstruction. An experienced captain abandoned a seaworthy vessel. A crew removed only navigation equipment. 10 people entered a lifeboat 6 miles from land and vanished without any documented trace. And a ship sailed itself for 9 days across 400 nautical miles of open ocean before being discovered in conditions that suggested the crew had just stepped away moments earlier. Given that Captain Briggs possessed 12 years of command experience with 0 prior incidents, that the vessel showed no structural compromise or fire damage, and that the crew systematically removed only navigation equipment while leaving all cargo and personal possessions undisturbed, What single event would generate both the urgency to abandon ship immediately and the calculation that lifeboat navigation equipment would be necessary for long-term survival?